Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Leslie with the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, and I'm here to present Eric Spellman to everyone. And he is going to be presenting a webinar, Is Your Digital Presence Illegal? Probably, which I think is a fun title, and it's going to be a great topic. Eric loves to have Q&A, so don't be shy, type whatever question you want into the Q&A, and he picks them up throughout the entire webinar. I'd like to also tell everyone that the New Mexico Small Business Development Center strongly encourage New Mexico small businesses to learn about cybersecurity risk and make sure they are taking action to protect their data, especially from ransomware. We have 3 June cybersecurity webinars. Our webinars do close 24 hours in advance. Our first one closes at 4 p.m. today, and it is tomorrow, and it's Outmaneuver Cyber Criminals. Then we have Eric next Wednesday that's going to be giving us a cybersecurity webinar on the top 10 mistakes hackers want you to make. Then following that, the following week to end June, we are going to have Cybersecurity Basics, a guide for small businesses. So I hope you guys have a chance to sign up for that, but let's learn about, is your digital presence illegal?
Well, welcome back, everybody. And this is one of the more fun topics, but it can also be a nervous one. I've had so many people, when I give this kind of talk, at the end of it, they're like, what am I going to do? Oh my gosh, I better call my lawyer. Oh my gosh, I better call my web developer. Well, it's better that you know that now than if you know it later. I've pretty much run into these just in the wild. I think I've had a customer have every single one of the issues that I'm going to be talking about. And I'll tell you how I handled it. And I'll also tell you how you can prevent it. Because so many of these are just based on, ignorance. You just don't know what you don't know. Most of you are not tech people. So ask your questions. I promise this is a ground zero webinar. So there's no dumb question. So ask any question you want. Just put it in chat and I will get right to it. So let's dive right in. Is your digital presence illegal? Now, when I say your digital presence is illegal, I'm not just talking about your website. I'm talking about social media. I'm talking about every kind, your email, any kind of way that you interact with other people digitally definitely applies here. So let's jump right into it. Here's going to be kind of what we're covering, the major areas that people tend to trip. Here is the list. And by the way, don't feel like you have to write every single one of these points down. As you know, if you've watched the previous webinar, my wonderful host is more than happy to send you the entire presentation. So if you're going to take notes, you might just write down some of those areas that you need to check on yourself, questions you have, and or thoughts that you might have about it. So you'll be getting the entire presentation. So here's our list. Here's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour. We're going to start with your internet address and talk all the things, your .com, all the things that can happen with that and all the things you need to worry about. I've definitely had just about every problem you can have with that occur with my customers. You need to own your text. In other words, all the text on your website. And by own, I mean own. Most people don't realize that chances are they do not own it. You need to own your pictures because pictures and text are different, but they're both property or assets, if you will. And you need to make sure that you are the owner. We're going to talk about customer privacy, the kind of privacy that you are supposed to guard and the issues that you can run into. And then we're going to have the most uncomfortable conversation. The very last thing we do is an incredibly uncomfortable, I hate this part, but I love this part because I basically have to be your parent. and kind of explain it from a legal standpoint. Too many people are making mistakes in this area these days, and they're getting into legal trouble. Some even losing their company. So if you don't want to get canceled for legal reasons, pay attention to that. So let's dive right into it. We're going to start with your internet address. Now, when I say internet address, it's a .com. But in the industry, we don't call it a .com. We call it a domain. And just so you know, I'm not just talking about .coms themselves. It could be .net, .org, .edu, whatever you have, that is your internet address, and it is called a domain. Now, the domain is not www.something.com. The domain is just that little two-parter, the something.com, the something.net, the something. Whatever. And you usually reserve those through a domain registrar. What you need to understand, and by a domain registrar, that's a company that simply keeps records on who is using it. Because here's the deal. You don't really own your .com. You know, you're renting it, so to speak. And as long as you keep paying rent, no one else can have it. It's like an address. It's like a sign pointing somewhere. Your .com is not like a place. It's a sign pointing to a server. That's all it is. It tells the internet how to get to your website, how to get to your email, how to get to wherever you happen to be, so that all traffic is pointed to your domain. And there are big monster servers on the planet who have the complete list of all these .coms and exactly what server, what computer on the internet they are stored at. Think of it as like a large phone book. And that address in the phone book is your .com. So realize it's not your company. Your domain is not your company. Your domain is simply a sign pointing to where your company happens to be. And by rent it, I mean that you technically can't own it. When you go to like GoDaddy.com, which is really the biggest one out there, you rent the .com and you're paying as little as maybe $5 a year. Yeah, $5 a year. And as long as you keep paying that $5 a year, you get to use that sign. But if you stop paying, and this happens so many times, if you stop paying, or maybe you changed your debit card or credit card that was being used to charge it automatically, or maybe you just forgot, or maybe the person who was in charge of managing that, got fired, or heck, got hit by a bus, whatever. The point is, if you don't keep up with it, sometimes it can lapse. And by lapse, I mean, GoDaddy will go, you know what? They didn't pay for another year. Cut them off. And so what happens is, when someone tries to go to your .com, it comes up and says, website not found. Or it comes up and says, this domain is managed by GoDaddy. Come get it. And that's right. Some people call it stealing a domain, but they're not stealing a domain. They're just buying it. They're renting it because you got evicted. That's the easiest way to think of it, is you got evicted. That address is no longer yours. And if someone else wants it, they get it. It even happens to big companies. I remember one time, way back, whoever was in charge of Google.com, yes, them, whoever was in charge of Google.com somehow let it lapse. They let their little rent on Google.com lapse, and someone bought it. Someone noticed that Google.com suddenly started showing up on the marketplace, and they bought it, and they repointed Google.com to their website. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if someone actually repointed your .com to their site? And you know what would make that even worse? Is if it were your competitor. That's right. Your competitor might grab up your domain and point it. And if they do, there's really not much you can do about it. I mean, you can fire off your little lawyer letters, but in the end, you didn't pay for it, so someone else can use it. So just keep that in mind. Now, there's one thing you need to check about a domain, and I run into this all the time. When someone registers your domain, and here's the deal, did you register your domain? Did you go to GoDaddy yourself and reserve your .com? You might be saying, and most people say, no, my web developer did that. My web builder, my web designer, my webmaster, they got it for me. Okay. There are 3 contacts. When you fill out the information to reserve your .com, it wants to know who's all involved with this so they can contact them, like when it's about to expire, or we haven't received your bill, or something like that. The 3 contacts are the administrative contact, the billing contact, and the technical contact. Okay, now the technical contact is the person that if something's wrong and it's not pointing right, GoDaddy or whoever can contact them and say, hey, there's something wrong with where it's pointing, your server's down, something. So that's a technical contact. The billing contact is exactly what it sounds like. When you don't pay, an email goes to them saying, hey, you're about to lose this. Now, just so you know, GoDaddy and a lot of these sites are pretty nice about that. If you forget to pay it, you get about 30 days grace. And what happens is in that 30 days, you stay up even though you haven't paid. But if you still don't pay after the 30 days, you're gone. You are gone. And so you get a little grace, but when it's gone, I mean, then it goes up and people can bid on it and get it. My point in telling you the 3 contacts, the administrative, and by the administrative, the technical, and the billing, is because you must understand the administrative. I told you about technical and billing. The administrative contact is the person in charge. They're the person who can make decisions. They're the person who can release it. They're the person who decides whether it stays up or not. It's the owner of the company. That's basically who it needs to be. Can I just tell you that? And if your web developer registered it for you, one of the dangers you can run into is that they registered it in their name, not yours. Your web developer should be the technical contact, might even be the billing contact, but the administrative contact must always be you. Always, always, always. Because that is who GoDaddy or whoever considers the owner or have the right to make decisions on that. So keep that in mind. The administrative contact is the most important one. So you're saying, well, how do I know? How do I know if I'm the administrative contact? How do I see all that? Well, there's 2 ways you can find out. One is you can do what we call a who is search on GoDaddy. And you can go to this site, whois.godaddy.com, and type in your own .com. Now, one of 2 things is going to come up. Either you're going to see all the information about your domain, including those 3 contacts I told you about, or you're going to see something that says this is private. This is, you're not allowed to see this. Sadly, more and more people are doing private. So if you get that on your domain, the next step is you better log into GoDaddy or wherever you got it done. And if you don't know where that was done, you better call who did it. You better call your web developer. You better call your online marketing people, whoever it is who has that information, and you better get a login to that. You must have control of that. And the reason I say that is because if you are not the administrative contact, then there's not much you can do. And so you need to ask your web developer who that is and have proof of it. Okay, because I've seen web developers put it in their own name. That's right. And then when their customers decide, you know what, I don't like your hosting anymore, I want to move my website somewhere else. And I've actually seen this happen. A web developer might go, you know what, you're not moving. You can move, but you ain't taking your .com with you. I'm keeping that. I've actually seen it, and legally they are correct. See, if you're the administrative contact, then you get to make that call, not them. So don't let a web developer or a hosting company, whoever registered your .com, hold you hostage with that information. I've seen it. Please don't do that. There's also a lot of scams going on. I see it both in mail, like the US mail, email, and actual phone calls. You know, all the people that call you about your auto warranties. Well, one of the other things they do is that they'll call you and they'll pretend to be GoDaddy. They'll pretend to be someone and say, "Hi, this is so and so. Your .com is about to expire. We'll be happy to re-up it for you." Now, the problem is what they notice is that it is about to expire. And so what they do is they let it expire, then they buy it and they sell it back to you, or they put it in their name, or they just take your money and don't do anything. Oh, okay. Question from Wayne. Hi, Eric. Good to hear another webinar from you. My question is about domain name registrations. About a year ago, I moved all my domain registrations from GoDaddy to Google. I am the admin, tech, and billing contact. What are your thoughts on registering domains at Google? I love Google. I really do. I'm a big Google fan, and they are just fine for that. I'd rather it be with a big company than like, you know, Uncle Howard's hosting. You know what I'm saying? I would rather it be a big company. So yeah, I've registered a few with the Google out of personal preference. Oops. Out of personal preference, I tend to use GoDaddy though. Okay, the next thing, let me see, let me make sure we got that. There we go. Yeah, so if someone calls you about your domain, don't do it that way. That's my point. Do not do it that way. Okay, Estefanita, and I hope I pronounced that right, is asking if you have your own server and you put a web page on the server, where do you register the domain? Okay, Estefanita, don't do that. Please don't have your own server. Back in the days of the internet, it was fine and people had their own web servers and it was no big deal. But the hackers today are at like the PhD level. And that's why I say never, 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 never host your own website. Because unless you have a full-time super security person always watching that, you're going to be got. And those hackers are going to come after you. And the reason they're going to come after you is because in order to have a web server on the internet, you've kind of got to open it up to the entire internet to get to. It's got to be available. So you've got to, there's not really a firewall. There's not any protections between the whole of the internet and that server. So I'm not a fan of you hosting your own. But if you're going to do that, please don't. If you're going to do that, then all you do is like at GoDaddy or somewhere, you're going to give them the IP address, you know, the address. Every computer on the internet has to have a unique address. It's called an IP address, Internet Protocol. You don't need to know that unless you're impressing people at parties. But it's called an IP address, and no one on the planet can, no two people on the planet can have the same IP address. And it changes. Your IP address is given to you by your internet service provider. So like when you log on to the internet, when you connect to the internet, you know, your internet provider assigns one to your computer. And you don't get to choose that usually. But if you have a web server, it's got to never change. It's got to always be the same. So you're going to get what's called a fixed IP. But the problem is that makes you the biggest target on the planet for hackers. Okay, good question and beautiful name. Let's move to the next one. Here we go. You got to own your text. Great question so far. Own your text, and I mean all the text on your website. Think of it as intellectual property. You know, when you have a small business, you may own the building. You definitely own all the inventory. You own the fixtures. You know, you own all of that. And you even own your name, the name of your company. You registered it with your city, with your state, so that no one else could use it. And that all makes sense. But guess what? There's a thing called intellectual property. And intellectual property is basically like a digital asset. It's, you can own something digital. So whenever someone creates all the text on your website, whether it's you or someone else, you can own that. It's like kind of like when Stephen King writes a book, he does a contract with, say, his publisher, and either he or the publisher own the intellectual property rights to that story, which means if they ever catch someone copying it, they will come after them. So my question to you is, who wrote all the information on your website. Now, you may have just handed the pamphlet to your web developer and they kind of just copied a lot of that stuff over, and that's fine. That belongs to you. But if you hired someone to actually write text for you, you know, content, content marketing is a big thing right now. So if someone actually wrote all that text for you, what you don't realize is that whoever wrote all that text for you legally owns the right to that text, even if you paid them for it. Just because you paid them to write it doesn't mean you own it because you bought it. It's kind of like, well, here's the way to find out if someone's copying. Okay, here's the way to find out. Go to Google and take a couple of sentences from your website, like pick a page where you're talking about something, the about us, or what y'all do as a company, something like that. And then copy those couple of sentences and put quotes around them and put it into Google. Okay, so when you put quotes around something in Google, you're basically saying, I want to find these words in that order. Now, uppercase and lowercase don't matter, but Google will find those words in that order. That's why I say grab a couple of sentences, because if you find the exact two sentences, you know, somewhere else, you might want to find out what's going on and who's using it. I'm telling you, it happens all the time. People in your industry will go to your website, like how you wrote something, and just copy and paste it on their own website, and you would never know. So, how do we define plagiarism? Okay. Well, here we go. A question. Hey, Don. Don writes, if the person who writes content is set up as an employee with the task of being social media manager, does our company own the content? It depends on, that's a great question. It depends. Depends. Usually, yes. Usually you would have a good case in court for that. But just to make sure, and we'll get to this point in just a second, I always want to make sure that people sign away any rights they own to content they're creating for you. And it can be part of your employment contract. It could just be a separate notice, but basically what you're wanting them to do is sign away any rights to anything they create for you. Okay, that's a great question.
We do have another question that
Oh.
came in through chat. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Let me read it to you.
Sure.
What if you have a company name and then find out someone in another state has another name? I'd imagine the same name. Should you change your name or you leave it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because business names are basically registered at the state level. So there could be, you know, Uncle Howard's Peaches here in New Mexico, and there could be Uncle Howard's Peaches in Texas. Normally, if they're regional, the two will never cross and there's never a problem. But when you go online, there can be, because there's only going to be one person who has UncleHoward'sPeaches.com in the whole world. And so if you're talking about if someone else has the domain that has your name in it, like Uncle Howard's Peaches, basically whoever registered it first gets it. You're going to have to come up with something else. But in a previous webinar, I talked about you don't have to, your .com doesn't have to be your business name. It can be what you do. It could be, you know, bestpeaches.com. You follow me? It doesn't have to be. In fact, Google likes it better if it's not your name, because Google's going to find you, and your SBDC counselor can make sure that Google knows what your business is named. So I'm not worried about that. But sometimes if you had like bestpeaches.com, Google would rank you very high if someone came in and typed in best peaches. So no, you really can't stop someone in another state from having your name. And hopefully that answered your question.
I'm also going to, I just want to tell the person that did the chat, I'm going to send over a link to our YouTube channel, and there's a lot of our webinars on there, and there's some that addresses some of these issues also. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. How do we define plagiarism? I'll tell you how computer systems do it, like how Google does it. A lot of you probably know that colleges, when they assign a thesis to a student, they want to make sure that a student doesn't copy, just go out on the internet, find someone else's thesis and copy it. And the way they check it is with some automated means. And one of the biggest ones out there is copyscape.com. Now, the way that Copyscape is used, and colleges pay for this, is a teacher will upload the student's paper to Copyscape. And what Copyscape will do is it will compare that paper with papers all around the internet. And the way it's deciding whether it's plagiarism or not is not based on, its exact word for word, every single bit of it. No, because every little cheat out there knows that you can just go change a few words here and there, and they're calling it unique. That's not unique. So what Copyscape does is it compares four word combinations between two papers. And if it finds the same four words enough between two papers, if there's too many of those going on, then it crosses the threshold and Copyscape says this is plagiarized. So if you're worried that your stuff is plagiarized and you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to go change a word here and it's fixed. No, a lawyer could come after you in a heartbeat. So you can go to Copyscape and kind of check. It's free. They have some paid stuff, usually used by colleges and people like that. But there is kind of a free search you can do. And like I said, you can even do what I call the poor man's plagiarism check and just go to Google with some quotes and see if anyone's using your stuff. Okay. So just realize plagiarism isn't just word for word, every single word, 100%. And remember, you don't want that anyway. You don't want copied stuff because Google only gives credit to who had it first. So if you're thinking, oh, wow, they rank well for this, I'm just going to copy what they did. No, Google only gives ranking credit to whoever had it first. I highly recommend that you write every bit of text on your website from scratch. From scratch. Okay. And if you have to hire someone to do it, then you make sure they sign off and so that you own every single bit of it. Okay. That there's something that says that they give up all rights to whatever they wrote to you or wrote for you. What about pictures? Pictures are the same way, except it's almost a little more Terminator-like. It's a little scarier with pictures, actually. So once again, who built your website? Did you give them every single picture that's on your website? Or did you let them provide that? Did you just say, here's my company, here's what we do, build me a website? If you let a web designer come up with the pictures, you could be in hot water. Especially if you use like a little local web designer, one of the 12-year-olds lives down the street kind of things. Okay. Because what they'll do, because they may not even understand the legalities of this, is they may just go to Google Images and say you're an accountant. So they'll go to another accountant's page somewhere, grab a picture and put it on your website. I've seen this, I've seen this, I've seen this. And if you do that, if you let one of these little web designers do this, the Getty Bot will get you. Okay, and that's what my little picture is over there. I tried to come up with a Getty Bot. Now, let me explain what the Getty Bot is. Getty Images is the largest company that handles the licensing for pictures and graphics. So when an artist, sorry, my nose is itchy. Whenever an artist creates a painting, or whenever a photographer takes a photo, they can upload it to Getty, and Getty will make sure that no one steals it. And the way Getty does that is they have these little, I call them Getty bots. And these Getty bots crawl around the internet and they compare every picture on every website with their licensing files. And if they find one of their customers' pictures on your site, oh my gosh, you're done. Here's what happens. I've seen this 100 times. You will get a letter in the mail and it will say, hi, these are, we're a lawyer. We're a law firm representing Getty Images. And we've discovered that you have one of our pictures or one of our customers' pictures on your website, and we can't find anywhere where you have the right to do that. So you need to pay us $10,000 per picture. That's right, 10 grand. And people immediately say, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't know, we'll remove it. Too late. Just removing it doesn't fix it. You will pay them $10,000 per picture, and they will come after you, and you will pay, because what they do is they took a screenshot of your website, dated it, has a date on it saying on this date, your picture was here. So just removing it will not fix it. You're done. Okay. And yes, I've tried to help companies through this, but in the end, they had to pay. So yeah, remember I told you, some of you at the end of this presentation are going to run screaming into the night. This is probably the major one. If you don't know where every single picture on your website came from, you could be running into issues. Okay, Marlena, I think it's Marlene or Marlene. If you post reviews of books online, can you use the image of the book cover with that review? Yes, of course. But usually what happens is these authors have press photos. In other words, they have photos for the press to use and specific photos for the reviewers to use. So check with the publisher. They usually have a specific place, and you have all the right to use those photos in a review. Estefanita, and I hope I'm saying that right, is asking, there exist websites for free. Okay, yeah, I'm getting to that. That's a great question. You're ahead of me. So I'm getting to what you're about to ask. Okay, so the Getty Bot will get you. Get release of all ownership, like I said earlier. And you need to also have your web designer sign off saying that every picture that they provided for you, that they have a license to do that. And if they put up pictures and, you know, they look like stock photos, you know, like professional photos, you need to have proof that they went to a stock site to get it, and not that your web designer didn't just go to, your website didn't. Oh, good. Thank you, Estefanita. I try really hard. I live in Texas, so I can usually sound those things out. So get a release on everything, folks. You need something in writing from them. But a lot of people say, well, doesn't Getty go after your web designer? What if you tell them the web designer did it? Why doesn't the Getty go after the web designer? Because guess what? It's on your website. Getty's going to come after you. You're the money bags. Getty's going to come after you, not the person who built your website. Okay. 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 Now to see if any of your pictures are being used somewhere, or maybe someone stole the pictures who built your website, the way to find out if any picture on your website exists already somewhere out there is go to images.google.com. This is a special Google site, totally free, and you can actually upload a photo to it. And what it will do is it won't search for words, it'll search for photos that look like that photo. It will actually search for photos that look like that photo. It's kind of really cool. In fact, something fun you can do with this is you can upload a photo of yourself, and Google will show you all.
Connect to the Wi-Fi network. You might want to check the connection settings in the Google Home app.
Hush. I swear I mentioned the G word and she starts talking to me. So what ends up happening is you can find all your doppelgangers out there. In other words, all the people on the planet who look like you. It's so creepy. I found people who look, I mean, exactly like me. And you think we're all unique, not in how we look. There's enough people on the planet that there are people who look just like you. And Google can help you find that. That's a little fun thing you can do, but mainly just use it on like your logo and some of the key photos you have on your website. Stock photos are the way to go, in my opinion. If you want professional photos, if you're not going to take the photos yourself, which I'm a big fan of you not taking those photos, because people who take photos themselves, sometimes if they don't know what they're doing, they look homemade and they make your website look cheap, therefore making your company look cheap. And people don't buy from cheap websites because they'll think you're just a little one-person shop here today, gone tomorrow. Using stock photography can help make your website look national and can make your company look bigger than it really is. So I'm a big fan of stock photos. Stock photos, and you really don't get to own the stock photo, but you have the right to use it. So I'll give you a good example. One of the largest out there is a site owned by Getty, and it's called istockphotos.com. And go out there and you just pay a few dollars usually for a photo. It doesn't mean you own the photo. It means you have the right to use it. And the Getty Bot won't get you. That's my favorite pay one. If you want a free one, my favorite free stock photography site is Pixabay, pixabay.com. And they have so many good photos out there that you can use for your website or for anywhere you want, and they're completely and totally free. Okay. Next, we got to talk about privacy, customer privacy. How do I explain this? Your website must have a privacy policy. Your website must have a privacy policy. And by that, I mean a link at the bottom somewhere that says privacy policy. And from any page on your website, I must be able to get there. And when you go to this privacy policy, it's basically going to say what you do with customer information that you receive. In other words, if you take any customer information over the internet, and I mean anything, if a customer types in information and it goes to you over the internet, you qualify and you must, by law, have a privacy policy. That's kind of part of the Communications Decency Act, passed in, believe it or not, 1996. And the privacy policy basically says, and I'll just tell you what most of them say, it says, any information you give to us, we will not sell, we will not give away, we will only use for internal use, blah, blah, blah. That's basically all they say. But you're going to need a number of lawyer paragraphs to do that correctly. It applies primarily to your website. That's really the area they look at the most. You know, social media, not so much, because, you know, it's here today and kind of hard to find after a few weeks. It, you know, disappears in your timeline. But a website is always there. And so if your website, and you need to look at your website, if you don't have a privacy policy, you could get in big trouble. Now, some of y'all are saying, well, I don't ask for customer information on my website, Eric. I don't need to worry. Hush. Sure you do. And where you do it is in the one place every website out there has, and it's called the Contact Us page. If you have a contact form, you know, a teeny tiny little form where someone can, you know, give their information, like call me back kind of a deal, you're taking customer information. So if your website has a Contact Us form, you must have a privacy policy. I always say just put it at the bottom. You know, you link it at the bottom of the page. It doesn't have to be on your home page. All these paragraphs of legalese, just give it its own little page called privacy policy, and just make sure that your footer has it. It shows up on every page, especially on the Contact Us page. The irony is you're saying, well, where do I get that, Eric? Where do I get a good privacy policy? You're going to laugh at me because what did I just say about copying other people's stuff? Just copy it. Go to anyone else's page, read through it to make it applies, you know, make sure it's someone like you, and just copy and paste it on your own page. You're going, can't someone come after me for that, Eric? No, because it's just legal paragraphs saying you promised to do this and that. That's all it is. You know, obviously change the name of the company in it and actually read through it and make sure that everything it talks about is applicable, but just copy and paste it. No need to hire a lawyer to write that up. But when you do put it up, have a lawyer sign off. See, that's how I save you money legally, okay? Don't have a lawyer write one because all they're going to do is go copy one. So go get one yourself, send it to a lawyer and say, hey, I'm about to put this up as my privacy policy. Can you just sign off on it and say I'm okay? Just trying to save you a few dollars. So yeah, always have a lawyer sign off on it, please. Don't just take my word for it. Always have your lawyer sign off on anything. And by the way, I should have said that at the beginning of this presentation. Anything you do based on me from a legal standpoint, have your lawyer make sure, okay? Have your lawyer make sure that's okay. Oh gosh, here we are. Here comes the big uncomfortable talk. Let's talk about free speech. What you got to realize is that there is a legal construct called defamation, okay? And it does apply online. If you defame someone on your website, or more importantly in social media, it basically documents it. It's not like you're on the phone with somebody and did it that way, and maybe it wasn't even documented. When you post it on your website, I guarantee if you talk and you're saying, what does that mean? I would never talk bad about someone on the internet. Here's what happens. Maybe a company doesn't mean to defame somebody. Here's what happens. A company trying to set themselves apart from their competition might say something like, maybe we were talking about Uncle Howard's peaches. Well, maybe there's, Uncle Henry's peaches. So Uncle Howard hates Uncle Henry. And so Uncle Howard on his website says, don't fall for these fakes. Their peaches all have worms in them, and you will die if you eat Uncle Henry's peaches. Guess what? Uncle Henry's gonna print that, that where it says that on your website, and they're gonna give it to their lawyer. And they're gonna come after you for defamation. In other words, if something you said to the public can somehow hurt the reputation and or business, and it can be proved that your business was affected by what Uncle Howard said, then yeah, you're done. You're going to owe Uncle Henry a ton of money. Once again, a judge must agree that what you said actually hurt Uncle Henry's business or hurt his reputation or his ability to do something. Okay, that's what defamation is. And so you're saying, well, Eric, how do I separate myself from other customers? Well, first, rule number one in the business world, and if you actually wonder that, it's probably because you haven't sat down with an SBDC counselor who would have made that rule number one. Never talk bad about your competition in public. Okay? Never talk bad about your competition. Even when a customer asks, whoa, hey, Uncle Howard, why are you better than Uncle Henry? By the way, when I had my company, I got that question all the time because people just want to know what the difference is between, say, Uncle Howard and Uncle Henry. You both sell peaches. Why should I buy it from Uncle Howard more than Uncle Henry? The mistake Uncle Howard can say is something like they all have worms, you will die, stuff like that. When I get a question about that, here's what I'll say. Well, you know what? My competition, they are really nice people. But where we excel is in blah, 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 blah. In other words, I never say one thing bad about my competition. I just tell them, I switch the conversation back to me. And I tell them about, here's what I'm good at. And here's, I don't say Uncle Henry, his peaches have worms in them. What I'll say is, unlike a lot of my competition, we make sure that we use, insecticides, and we inspect we inspect every peach for any damage by insects so that you're only getting the freshest, you see where I'm going with that. Okay. So always turn the conversation around. So on the internet, especially, don't talk bad about your competition. People actually respect that. I've actually had people come to me and they said, Eric, your prices were a little higher, but when I went to your competition, all they could do was talk how bad you were. And Eric, I don't respect that. If you have to get my business by talking bad about someone else, I don't want to give you my business. I'm telling you, it pays off. Never talk bad about your competition, ever. It will burn you every time. It applies primarily in social media and web hosts. Your social media is where you're going to run into this the most because you think it's a little informal. Sometimes you might treat, say, your Facebook business page the same way you treat your personal account on Facebook, where you feel like you could be a little more free with your words, not realizing that your business page can be seen by everyone, including your competition and the competition's customers and the competition's mom. Whew. Okay. So keep in mind, even when you make posts on social media, don't diss other people. You got to realize that the people who host social media and the people who host the web host are fairly immune from lawsuits. For instance, if I went on Facebook and I threatened, well, let's say the president, any president, not this president, but if I went on social media and I threatened the president and I said, I want to kill you, or you should die or something like that, I guarantee within 24 hours, you will have a knock on your door from two guys in suits who look like, the Men in Black. Okay. And they're going to interview you and they take every threat seriously because they see that as a threat. Okay. And you're saying, well, why didn't they go after Facebook? Why didn't Facebook stop me? They're never going to go after Facebook because part of the Communications Decency Act basically gave people who host websites and people who run social media companies almost complete immunity from what others write on their platforms. Okay? That's called free speech because Facebook can't control what you write. So therefore, Facebook can't be in trouble for what you write. There wouldn't be Facebook if that wasn't done. That's why they fixed that back in 1996. And that's also why your web host, they're not going to go after the people who host you. And by the way, Facebook, I told you this is going to be the most uncomfortable talk I have. Facebook and your web host have the full right to cancel your account, cancel your website, cancel everything for any reason they want. Any reason. People, you don't have a right to social media. You don't have a right to have your website hosted anywhere you want. The people who own those platforms have every right to cancel you for any reason. And I mean legally, they have that right. Okay? So they're going to come after you. They're not going to go after Facebook. They're not going to go after your web host. And like I said, they can remove your content for any reason. You're saying, Eric, didn't we just have the uncomfortable talk? Sort of. I was building up to it. That was kind of uncomfortable. But here's where we get down to the nitty gritty. I've actually had people leave my presentations. And when I mean that, when I'm speaking at a large conference, I've actually had people walk out of the room in a huff based on what I'm about to tell you. I'm just basically giving you good advice here. Okay. So listen up. If you are a business, there are two topics you should never, ever, ever, ever bring up on your Facebook page or your public facing anything. You should never have on your website. You should never have on your Facebook page. And they are religion and politics. Let me say that again. On your website and on social media for your company, you should never talk about politics and never talk about religion. Now, on your personal Facebook page, go for it. All you want. Have all your political talks with your friends, but do not drag your company into this. Now, some of y'all are going, well, Eric, what if you're a church? How do you not talk about religion? Okay, churches have an excuse. You follow me? I mean, that's what they are. And if you're a politician, duh, you have an excuse there. What I'm talking about is a donut shop talking about religion. What I have a problem with is a greenhouse talking about their political preferences. Don't do it. It's not necessarily illegal, okay? You can do it. It's not illegal. I'm telling you, they are business killers. They are business killers. You know, the only people I have a problem with this, the only people I have who have a real problem with this are people who've either A, live in a small town and believe that everyone there believes the same way they do, or B, they've been running their business for so long, they assume that every customer has the same beliefs they do, either on politics or religion. And so they might put, like a Christian fish on their website. They might put, or they might quote Bible verses or something in social media on their business. Keep in mind, I'm talking about the business side of it. What I'm saying is don't do it. Because what you don't realize is that you have customers who do not agree with what you believe. And all you did was push them away for no reason. If you are a public business and you are willing to do business with anyone out there, then do not broach those two subjects. Do not. It will only burn you. And there are so many examples out there of small businesses being taken to the woodshed by the press or by people in their community because they put something out there that they never needed to. And if you're the boss, it starts with you. Just drop it. I promise you. If you really want everyone as a customer, don't do it. Key points to remember here, people. Understand the difference between your personal social media accounts and a business account. I'm not trying to stop what you say in your personal account. Go for it all day long. Check for plagiarism. Make sure that no one's copying your stuff or that your web developer didn't copy your stuff. Own your pictures, do the same kind of search there. Make sure you have that privacy policy. And once again, understand free speech. Because remember, free speech is free, but it doesn't mean you're free from the consequences of it. Questions on anything we've gone over?
I know we probably are going to have a lot of questions coming in because I tell you, it's a hot topic. I do want to update everyone while they're thinking of their questions. I told them about the cybersecurity coming up. I also want to tell you that we have e-commerce and alternative selling methods. This is all just this week. Basic steps to starting a business in New Mexico. Again, cybersecurity, outmaneuver cyber criminals. We have accessing financial resources, bilingual session. We have IP pirates, intellectual property pirates, part 2. And then we have Eric back finishing up the week with your most important online stat you cannot ignore. We've had some technical difficulties on that one, and I am ready to hear what that is. So we have questions coming in. Eric, I'll turn it over back to you.
Actually, they're just compliments. And thank you for those. Thank you very much for those. Like I said, it's chances are, there's one, Vandever or Vandever. I hope that's a correct one there. What if my site uses Google's privacy policy? Is that different? That's fine. Google knows what it's doing. So if Google is allowing you to use that, fine. Like I said, you must, whatever privacy policy you pick, even if it's just copied from a large company, please just get a sign off from your lawyer. Please. That's all. I mean, I can't give advice, legal advice like that. I'm not a lawyer. That needs to be a part of this presentation. Okay. All I can do is recommend ways for you to save money with a lawyer by copying someone else's, run it by another lawyer, get their sign off, and then you're good. Okay, great question. Other questions on anything we've gone over? Anything at all? I get the feeling that a number of you have your homework laid out for you. When you get off of this talk, some of you are going to immediately start Googling stuff I've told you to Google. And if you weren't already doing it while I was talking. Any other questions?
Looks like the rest of that looks like the end of the questions. I want to remind everyone that if you do have questions on any of the topics that Eric presents on, bring them back to the next webinar, because this is all stuff that you can build on. So everything you've got, you may get home and go, wait a minute, what about that? So don't forget, when he gets back with us, type those questions into the Q&A. And if there's
Great.
not any more questions, I think that's it for today. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Bye.